Next, we'll be hearing from Joy Gary, urban farm grower from Revision Urban Farm in Dorchester, Massachusetts, who will be speaking on urban farming for a shelter and a CSA. I'm sorry, I'm not positive. Is Joy here in the room with us? I beg your pardon. Okay, in that case, we'll move on with Bruce Fulford from City Soil. Bruce will be speaking on Compost for a City. If we can load up Bruce's talk.
So I wish I had the slide that showed my profession, composter, just below the hierarchy of rat and chicken. I think there was urban soil in there too, but from the presentation earlier. But that is certainly part of what we deal with as composters for the city. My company, City Soil and Greenhouse, composts the city of Boston's yard wastes and increasingly other materials, and have composted over the years manures, food waste, rats, dead fish from Revision Urban Farm. So I'll talk about some of those materials and how we do it and where we do it. And most of you already know why, but I'll tell you a bit about, I live in this part of Boston, on the southern part of Boston, Roslindale, Mattapan, and the green space around it is part of what, it's more than 1,000 acres of green space, but it also hosts a great deal of industrial pollutants, contaminated land, and a lot of the city's waste management functions have happened there. It's also the green belt and hosts many of the greenhouses historically that supported the cemeteries and grew flowers for the cemeteries and for the Parks Department. So we're located in the middle of that. Our composting site is 5 acres, and hang on a second. I grew up in the city. I grew up in the country. It became the suburbs, and I've lived in the city for 25 years. I've spent most of the last 25 years trying to make my part of the city more like what I grew up in. I shoveled horse shit at the local stables. We had 2 acres, lived in a mixed community, and surrounded by cornfields and vegetable gardens and orchards. And I knew that it was possible to do a great deal agriculturally on a fairly small footprint. But I was accustomed to a larger footprint than where I presently live in Roslindale, which is 11,000 square feet. I also grew up as the son of a conservationist. He was a teacher. My dad worked during World War II, mostly combating erosion and trying to repair damage from the Dust Bowl in Texas and Arkansas. And so I learned a lot about erosion control, the value of topsoil, and although we didn't call it carbon farming, that's what we did. We mulched, we cut down trees, we stopped erosion using logs, we made dams, we harvested hay and put it down for suppressing weeds all around massive zucchini forests that we grew. You know. So this was part of what we did. Still technical difficulties. Hang on. And some of those same erosion control techniques and carbon farming that I learned about as a kid are what I've incorporated into projects that I've done with a whole lot of local stakeholders. Some of it's been USDA money, some of it's been EPA funds, Department of Environmental Protection, and Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. But what we try and do and use the organic materials that we harvest or that other people harvest and bring to us at our composting site, we try and develop products that are safe to use, cost-effective, beneficial, and have significant impact on erosion control, on carbon sequestration, and on productivity of the landscape, mostly right around where I live or within 5 miles. Plenty of materials. We handle close to 25,000 cubic yards of yard waste that comes into our site. That's close to 1,000 truckloads, and it comes in mostly in yard waste form in bags and barrels of leaves and grass, but we also bring in a lot of wood chip and carbonize the site and the area around it. The composting equipment that we use also is we attempt and to a large extent succeed in using equipment that has less fossil fuel demand, fewer carbon emissions than some of the standard equipment that's available. So we identify the best equipment that turns the compost most efficiently. And most of the best stuff is imported from Europe. There's a German composting turner that uses about 1/5, 20% of the fossil fuel, as if we were to use front-end loaders, which is a standard piece of equipment used in the industry. Here's some of the partners that were involved in a $500,000 project we did around the 40 acres immediately around the composting site. So it was to make carbon-rich mulches and composts and make sure that they were incorporated into the landscape, which includes community gardens. We supply to more than 100 community gardens around Boston, and we sell to local landscapers, to local gardeners, and try and get more of our products that we manufacture incorporated into the public landscape, land owned by the state and land owned by the city. That's a more challenging part of our work, is to make sure that the custodians of those lands understand the value and are capable of raising the funds to add good quality compost or mulches in large quantities that really have a significant impact. This compost turner also releases, you can see some of the heat being lost. The heat from composting is about the equivalent of about 10 gallons of oil for every cubic yard of compost. That's the amount of heat that's released during decomposition. Harvesting it is another story. So we, in terms of our success in this year, we're making a leaf mulch that's being distributed during Boston Shines. So hundreds of cubic yards just went out yesterday and the day before to be distributed throughout Boston as a mulch, as opposed to a ground up wood pallet based colored and dyed mulch. We're using something that never had to be ground up with a very expensive and costly fuel inefficient grinder. This is the type of turner we started out with at Franklin Park. It was a propane powered turner. We actually composted Harvard Dining Services food waste in this half-mile long windrow of compost. I've been doing this for many years, but now it's state law to be separating food waste. So we're incorporating food waste into some of the composting that we do. We used to take Haymarket material and compost it in Brookline at Allendale Farm. And we made compost, and we've used it. This is for the food project in Roxbury. Blended the soils with these composts, and they've been used for all of food projects, 2 acres, Revision Urban Farm, bringing in compost and heating that greenhouse there with compost, again, made from dead fish, manure, and leaves, right in the middle of the city on 1/3 of an acre, half an acre. Some of our products are used, this is at the top of the Boston Design Center, Higher Ground Farm, a custom mix, a very lightweight soil with the compost in it. Some of Cambridge's finest. And some of the tomatoes produced by the food project in char amended soils, biochar amended soils that we blended with compost and applied to the growing beds. We've worked with Bootstrap Compost, taking some of the food waste that they collect and incorporating that into our compost. I'd love to have a pair of these things in my stocking. But these are some of the higher tech systems for composting in confined spaces. People are worried about rats. There are ways to compost in the middle of the city without attracting rats, and usually it involves higher capital systems. So this is one we designed with state money, and would love to build a Maserati of composting and integrated groovy systems. But in the meantime, we don't have the $3 million that this would take. We do have a 5-year contract with the City of Boston, and the land around our composting site there's more than 5 acres of land immediately surrounding our composting site, which would lend itself very well, and we've promoted and proposed to do more of a permaculture-based urban food forest around it, using the heat from the compost to power the greenhouse, and taking the measures that are required to basically take control and stewardship of blighted land around our composting sites is something that's an agenda that we need a lot more help with. We've got a lot of traction at City Hall, fair amount of traction in the previous state government, but when looking to acquire land and control it for multi-year projects, we will be enlisting some more assistance from anybody here that's interested in doing so. This shows some of the area that we're trying to take back the land. It is, after all, most of it is our land. It's the Commonwealth's land. So if you want your taxes to be used effectively, promoting the types of things that are in this discussion here today, this is your land, and there are people who do not want it used for these purposes. But this is what we're planning to do with a $75,000 grant that we got from Department of Agricultural Resources, is put up this greenhouse, heat it with compost, and use that for carbon sequestration and a very low carbon diet approach to managing the city's composting site. So thank you very much.